Another thing that sort of ties into that is I'm seeing parents buy things for their children, gift things to their adult children that honestly never would have happened when I was growing up, um, and even 20 years ago, I don't think we would have seen on the same scale. Um, if a client comes to you and says, Pat, I have these 3 adult children, my wife and I have more than we need. We're thinking of giving money to our children or buying this for our children. How would you advise them? How would you advise a client in that scenario?
Well, it's a extremely common question. And I'd say most of clients, particularly if as they do estate planning and gift planning, is they're extremely careful with the kids until they're maybe 35. And then it's, if they've got a trust, then at that point, but even at that point, it's like, I don't think I have any clients that have given their, maybe at 35, they've got unfettered access to it. But by that time, I think the die has been cast. You can kind of tell what kind of person they are. And if there's a problem before then, they can change the terms of the trust. So I think it's highly dependent upon, if it happens before then, it's dependent upon how they view the child and whether this will, if is it a reward for meritorious conduct, or are you trying to sort of artificially boost their lifestyle and maybe demotivate them? So it's a tough call. I think that particularly a lot of people in our generation grew up with not much, and it's hard to see your kids struggle. And I think I certainly have seen instances where it's gotten out of hand, particularly probably much more so with what I would call dynastic wealth into the third and fourth generation. It can get pretty sloppy. I don't have any of those clients personally, but I work with people who work with those kinds of families, and it can get pretty out of hand pretty fast.
What about a client that comes to you and says, hey, I got 4 kids. I feel comfortable gifting to 3 of them. I'm concerned about gifting to the other for whatever reasons. Maybe they have an addiction. Maybe they're, not personally responsible. How do you advise them to navigate that situation, or how do you see them navigating that situation, well or poorly?
I'm thinking of a situation where the guy handled it poorly, and it was over a lifestyle choice that one of the kids made, and the person was a fine person. He just didn't agree with the lifestyle, and he completely disinherited her. So, I thought that was harsh because she was otherwise, a productive member of society. I think most people in that situation are, not only is the parent acutely aware, the child's acutely aware that they've made some mistakes, but I do think it's something that's not, you don't cast it in stone. The person, actually, the man is now deceased, but when he was doing his estate plan, he just completely, and he was very wealthy, completely disinherited his daughter. And I thought, you can't stop them from that. It wasn't fair. But you often see, probably a more common issue is, my daughter's going to get my business. What am I going to do with it's worth X, and I have 2 other children? What am I going to do with them, and how am I going to treat them fairly? And that happens all the time, and it becomes difficult if the business is super valuable and outside assets aren't. So you've got there's a lot of Solomon-esque advising that has to go on in that situation. It's not always received super well, and they're going to do what they want in the end, but you can tell them what you think what makes sense.
And in that scenario, what does make sense?
Well, a lot of times it's like, hey, if the business owns a real estate, then the other kids get the real estate. And if you've got a 401k plan that's worth X, then the other one gets the 401k plan. And if it's still a big disparity, I mean, you hate to do this, but maybe the children that aren't involved have an interest in the business that's um, non-voting, but they get some sort of distribution from the business, because you got to be fair about it. And I think everybody wants to be fair, but you got to be. A lot of times probably the biggest mistake is, hey, I got 4 kids, each child will get 25% of this business, and only one of them works in it, and that's just, yeah, you might as well just throw, you know, um, stick a dynamite into it, because that's just going to blow up within 5 years.